right, here we go. Sci-fi Express Lane Walking Edition. Yo, I'm out here walking every day instead of driving to work because I'm recovering, right, from health crisis. So I have to get my expressions out. So this is the walking trail, right? And I'm in the express lane. All right. Well, actually, I'm on the slow side. I'm on the right side, but that's the way you're supposed to walk. Anyway, I wanted to talk about Comic Cons and the changes in them. I want to talk about these anime conventions. Shout out to the New York Comic Con. I think my cousin went yesterday. Animate Miami. Animate New York. And then these card shows and like all of the different manifestations of stuff that came from comic books, right? Because we don't draw what is it? Funko Pop figures. Funko Pop figures are from comic book characters. So it's one came from the other. People don't draw a cosplay character and make a story around it. People take the character from the story and cosplay that. So it does come from it. It's like we don't get cards. Well, there are card games that start as card games and people write a story around it. So it's, you could say that, you know what I'm saying? There are definitely games like even one I like with Rihanna on Battleship. That was a simple game. They even made a movie out of it. I don't know if there's a sequel, but it's such a good story that they could have done a sequel. Anyway, let's go back to these Comic Cons, right? Comic Cons was everything. They were card shows, they were long boxes, they was Funko Pop, they were stickers, drawers, they were illustrators, freestyle illustrators, tattoo people was there, cosplayers was there, board game people was there. It's everybody at a Comic Con, and I think that's what the energy is. Actors, it was movies, they had a book aisle. Come on, this is Comic Cons that had all of this, right? And then something changed. They were like, oh, they're not the same. You got too many people dressing up. It's dominating it. They're coming to dress up as characters. They're not coming to buy. Then you have, the convention is going up on their prices because they have these guests coming. They brought all the actors from Twilight, or they get all the actors from Walking Dead, and it's killing the sales because people are there. They're spending all their money on a Giancarlo Esposito autograph rather than buying my book. And I think like all of those are true, right? To varying degrees. Because I've been around since the beginning of all of that, My film screened in 2005, the first SuperCon down here. It was also before Spooky Empire, and that was Holla If I Kill You, my first movie. And since then, I've seen the changes in the conventions. I've seen the cosplayers come around. I've seen the Funko Pops that almost feel like cryptocurrency. I've seen card shows because they really didn't take over Comic Cons. They just started their own separate thing. I did a show 2 weeks ago in Melbourne, and it was two people, right, with their own comic books. One long box guy, and everything else, 3 other rows were card shows, card vendors. And I was like, this isn't even billed as a card show, but and then yesterday I was trying to get a table at a local card show, and the guy was like, it's 5 hours, it's $150. I was like, that's a lot of money, bro, for a 5 hour, which is almost equivalent to a pop-up, right? And I said, in a one-day thing. And I said, yeah, he said, well, people are doing it. And I said, yeah, but I'm a creator. I have my comics is anywhere from $10 to $25 right now. I have books that's $20 and $30, but those are my products, and hitting that mark is really hard, whereas, at least you want to get double the table if there's not expenses. So it's double your expenses because your books cost about half as much as you selling them for. So you still got, you sell a $10 book, you make $5, right? That's the rule of thumb, But to make your profit, you sell $100 worth of product, you really only made $50. So you got to make twice the booth or whatever just to cover the booth. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, let's move past that. He was telling me, yeah, I sell comic books too. I said, yeah, you create them or do you sell Marvel, DC stuff? Because long box dudes, I was talking to a long box guy yesterday. He was like, man, I make $2,000 at these conventions. These little one-day things. I was like, God dang, if I made $2,000 in one day off an 8-hour, let's just say it's 8 hours, I would lose my mind, and I have heard some creators, making money like that, but they're like the top level books that are out. And I don't really only talk to black creators. I don't know enough mainstream or white creators to be able to have an opinion on them. But yeah, dudes ain't making $2,000 in a day. Okay, I've heard $4,000 over the weekend. New York Comic Con is a machine of its own, but even in Comic Con, people ain't coming back $10,000. If they make $5,000, that's regular. And then the Artist Alley, I don't think they making $5,000 over those days, and that's at Comic Con. So card shows are different. You can sell a card for $100, and many times they got collectible shows where you selling an old vintage comic book for $300. This guy had long boxes and he was selling a Batman oversized comic, absolute Batman oversized comic for $150. $150 is my day. You know what I'm saying? I made about 200 and change yesterday, which was not bad. It was not great, but it was this one was a 7-hour convention. It is what it is, and I think I made about average. It was maybe three of us, four creators. I don't know what everybody made. I know I had a lot of choices. There was a couple of guys that have books and manga. They have a lot of books, and then there was another guy that was new. He had his first 3 books up, and supposedly it was his first convention, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him. Then there was another guy who has about 5 books of his own work, but I don't think people made $2,000, but I bet you the long box guy did. I can ask him, so it's different when you're selling your own comic books. So that's one thing. And then I think you riding with the crave. I know I'm off topic, making no sense, or I just went off topic. But back to the Comic Cons and the changes, I think it's all good, right? I remember when Luke Cage came out, and I said, we need a black convention like Luke Cage TV show, where KRS-One and Rakim is performing during the convention, and people are, that energy is there, Comic Cons did get past long box nerds and stuff like that. They got cosplayers and cool people. The card brings in a different type of person. Those card kids are cool kids. They dress different. They have fashion sense. Not to say that the nerds don't, but nerds are very independent. They don't follow a fashion. They don't follow any fashion trends like hip hoppers or cool people do. We all know what we're wearing. We have this and that going on. So it's interesting. I think the Funko Pop explosion has not only plateaued, but I think it's on the decline. I think it was just overkill, but it had a good 4 or 5 year run. Now it's sustained, but it may be on the decline. I see less Funko Pop people. There used to be just people coming and selling only Funko Pops, so I don't know. And there's Funko Pop is a small figurine. It's a collector's fun thing. It's like it's a pet rock almost, you know. But what you call it, when it comes to figurines, they're not going anywhere, you know. Weta and all these other figurine companies, they're not going anywhere because people want to get those. But you don't see those at small conventions. You see those at the New York ComicCons, the ComicCons in San Diego. You know, those the big ones get Weta and the big figurine manufacturers. So I don't know. I just will say this. I think story still dominates. Um, you always had book fairs, right? Now you always had science fiction conventions. You always had fantasy conventions, and not every state has those, or not every city, and there's definitely not as popular as Comic Cons, but they exist. You have science fiction film festivals. You have horror film festivals. You know, horror has its own genre. You know, own circuit of conventions. You know. But you had book fairs, you had film festivals. So you had all those different things separated by medium. Horror separates itself by genre. I think card shows will exist. And just like I can sell my comics at a film festival or a book fair, my main convention is a Comic Con. You know, I can sell my books at Comic Con, but, you know, the main place would be at a book fair. So I think, you know, nothing is going to put a Comic Con that knows what its purpose, focus is, which is everything coming from the comic book, movies, figures, drawings, tattoos, you name it, cosplaying. Just embrace it all. If you start trying to separate certain things, you know, we don't want to guess. Then, you know, you're compromising a Comic-Con because Comic-Con is all of that. But it's a balance. So you have everything. You have your film festival. You have your book section. But you balance it. You know, don't go too heavy on any one of those things except for independent guys. You know, those are the people that drive the market. Like I learned from my man up in New York that I do Comic-Con exclusives. My stuff isn't in stores. You know, and I'm the type of guy you want because I'm going to bring traffic because they can't get the stuff in stores. You know what I'm saying? Now, I may have my last Harlemite that sold in stores, but in the convention, you're getting the signature on it. You know, you might get a poster, you might get a sticker. So even though you bought it in stores, when you buy it from me in the convention, you get something else. So anyway, I know my camera skills is really off because my arm be getting tired. And I don't hold it up enough. But I want to thank you for riding out with me in this walking express lane edition of Sci-Fi Express Lane. Jeff Carroll out. Always like, subscribe, share, and comment. All right? Deuces.